Tilder! Today we're going to talk about 5 tips and tricks that you can achieve with bi-colored LED lights, specifically made by GVM. 1. Use the wireless remote. That's right, they have one now. 2. Use tungsten and daylight in the same scene for additional contrast and mood, especially if you're filming action movies. 3. Use the color temperature and dimmer knobs to simulate practical lights. 4. Use the memory functions on the back of the LED panel for more intense practicals. And 5. Save your money. Use wax paper or a collapsible laundry hamper to achieve diffused light. Done. Roll that intro. What's up, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we are constantly and always still learning. So today is going to be a tips and tricks video on how you can use bi-colored lights, specifically the GVM 520S. But before we get to that, you heard correctly. They actually do have a wireless remote. They were actually developing it before the kit got out to me. So now all the kits include it, and basically, this thing rocks, and I'm gonna tell you why. So if you take a look at the remote and the back of the LED panels, you'll notice that there's actually groupings from 0 to 11. So yes, this remote can actually control 12 groupings of lights. So if you have like 20 of these things and you're lighting up a major scene, you can group all these lights together and then basically control your entire lighting setup from one remote. That is freaking awesome. So basically how you can get this remote to work is you need to turn on your LED lights, and then from there you need to set the mode to slave mode. And at that point you can use these up and down arrows and choose which grouping you want your specific lights to be in. Now after that, basically the remote just acts as the master, so you can turn up and down the intensity in 1% increments instead of 5, and you can also change the color temperature. Now, one awesome feature about this remote is, yes, you can actually turn on and off the lights from the remote itself. Now, this is awesome because if you have lights that are hung maybe about 30 feet in the air, the last thing you want is when everyone's breaking for lunch that you have to climb up there and turn each and every one of them off. So, not anymore. You can actually use this remote and turn it off from there. Now that being said, because if you're gonna have lights hanging up and they are battery operated, I'm going to guess that yes, it's obviously drawing some power because it needs to know when you want to turn it back on. I'm not really sure how long the battery duration would be in terms of standby mode, but if you're on a set and you only have one pair of batteries, just be conscious that the battery is constantly being used even when the light is being powered off. So one of the first major tips and tricks is, now that we have a wireless remote, get these lights higher. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because from a lighting perspective and just normal observation of every day, when you go to an office, when you go to a cafe, when you're outside, light sources are always coming from the top, or maybe from the top at an angle. So when you're lighting a scene, think about it. What is it that you're trying to do with the lighting and crafting? If you're trying to make sure that people look at the image and say, yes, this looks correct because that's what I see in normal life, then that's what you want to do. You want to be able to make these lights come from the top at an angle or straight atop if you really want to get some dark shadows under the eyes, what have you. Now, of course, there are lighting situations where they come blasting from the side if you have a huge window source, or from the bottom if you're getting moody. But now that we can actually use a wireless remote to turn on and off the lights, change the color temperature, change the intensity, and we can basically put the light at least 30 feet in the air. We probably won't actually do that in a normal set, but the fact that you can do it, start doing it, because it's going to change the way you light, and it's going to give the audience a more natural look that they're used to. And when you're doing these type of scenes, you want natural. You don't want people to go, huh, why is everything bottom lit and they're at a restaurant? Do restaurants have lights coming from the bottom? No, they're usually coming from the top, kind of dim. So the next tip and trick is with these bicolored LED panels, start playing around by using them at different color settings in one shot. So if you look at the example that I gave 2 weeks ago, it shows that I was being lit on the daylight side, but I had tungsten in the back. Now, the reason I like this kind of mix is because it gives more additional contrast to the scene. Now, generally speaking, people will be lighting for shadows and all that other good stuff, but when you start playing with color, you're adding an additional level of contrast that gives a more full look to your final image. Now, the thing about this is yes, I used bicolored LEDs and they were on the opposite end of the spectrum, but I was actually exposing for tungsten because I wanted that blue to really pop and show that I was in kind of like a really dark area, and the light that was coming is going to give a more unsettling look than a warm and pleasant look. So the next tip and trick is you can actually use the rotary knobs in the back to simulate a couple real-life objects without actually having them. For example, if you want to simulate a TV in front of your subject, you don't actually want to use the intensity dimmer going up and down because that doesn't really look natural to me. You actually want to use the bicolored dimming knob because when you're watching TV and it's switching from certain angles, what have you, the light actually changes. It doesn't just stay at a constant color. Depending on what the characters are wearing, the scene that's actually happening, it's actually going to change color. So you're going to want to use the dimming knob, and you don't want to go between the maximum tungsten because when the blue hits, it hits really hard. So you kind of want to be towards the just before it switches over to full tungsten or full daylight, and you just kind of operate around, I don't know, 20%, and that's going to give you a nice smoother look. Now obviously, yes, if you want to have that strobing effect where the blue suddenly hits in, you can definitely do that, and there's definitely situations where that would help. Another interesting thing you can do with these LED panels is actually these function buttons down here, 1 through 4. So basically, these are memory banks, and you can set your light to a specific setting and simply hold one of the buttons until you see the word collected, and now that is saved in the internal memory of the LED lights. This allows you to switch from certain settings very quickly, as you can see here, so that you can achieve some more practical lights, or maybe you move around on set a lot and you always have a very specific setup. Simply set the settings that you use to each memory bank, so whenever you're moving from set 1 through 4, you can immediately set it back to the way it was. Now, in terms of using the intensity dimmer, you can actually kind of simulate a nightlife look. So let's say your subject lives in a cyberpunk world and he kind of lives in the downtown area, and there's a lot of neon lights that are kind of glowing and doing their own thing in terms of advertisements or what have you. If that's the case, get yourself some colored gels, get creative, and then you can use that intensity dimmer and go up and down to kind of simulate that there's a lot of stuff going on below where he lives. Now, the last tip and trick is actually a really fun one. So basically, you can kind of create your own China ball or aperture space light, if you will. All you have to do is acquire one of these collapsible laundry hampers, and they fold down to a nice small size, and then they open up to about this big. And basically, you just have to tuck it over the barn doors and take the handles and draw it to the back and tie it up or clamp it up, what have you, just to kind of give it a little bit more snugness to the whole thing. And what this is going to do is it's actually going to cut the light a little bit so that it spreads it out and becomes a lot softer instead of more harsh on your subjects. Now, the reason why we're doing it this way is because we're trying to get a more ambient look instead of a more directional look like I have currently right now, where the GVM light is just shooting straight at me. So if you look at this example, this is what it looks like when the light is shooting straight at your subject. And this is what it looks like when you have the DIY kind of China ball looking thing next to it. You'll notice that the light is a little bit softer and it seems to kind of spread out a lot more into the actual atmosphere and environment of the room. And sometimes that's what you want. You don't want a very direct light at your talent. Now, if you have a more powerful version of this GVM light, what you can do for some extra diffusion is actually purchase a laundry mesh bag with a drawstring handle. And basically all you have to do is just wrap it over the collapsible one, and that's going to give you an extra layer of material that's going to break up the light and further diffuse your light. Now I'm gonna be making a more fun, substantial version of this laundry hamper thing. I'm actually gonna go buy some fabric and I'm going to cover up these mesh holes in a very specific way so that I can get the light even more uniform than it already is. If you want me to make a video on how I'm actually gonna build it so you can build it yourself, then hit me up in the comments below. Let me know you wanna see that and I will get that video out as soon as I can. And hey, that's it for this week, folks. If this video has made all the influence in your purchasing decisions, I would really appreciate it if you use my affiliate links down below. This costs nothing extra to you. It just gives me a little bit of commission so that I can continue making videos like this for you. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave it down below. I will get to them as fast as I can. And until then, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.